on. All right, we're good to go. Go ahead, Devin.
Now it's official. This is Devin Hamilton, N7IQZ. Good afternoon, and thank you very much for joining this educational session. I am really excited to be doing this because I was not. I've never done any kind of presentation to a ham group like this. Although I've done lots of presentations, for other things, other folks. But I really appreciate everybody jumping in here and participating. Again, this is an educational meeting about basically rally hamming. And I wanted to start by just saying a huge, big thank you to Jack, KI7RMU, and to the PSRG org for their continued support. It's been really amazing. I've been doing rally for about 4 years. And in that time, in the last 3 years, I kind of started talking about it on various nets, a lot of those on PSRG, and Jack and others have always been very welcoming, Brooks and Cami and Joan. And I've always really dug that there is sort of a rally genre amongst hams that I didn't even know was there. And when Joan started talking about the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and rallies back in the day, I started looking up that stuff and looking at old videos and was really excited about that. So PSRG has really invigorated my interest to kind of spread the word about rally and get it out there to more folks that they have opportunity to participate. And of course, the concept of that is that there's a lot of hams out there and there's a lot of new hams every day. And the goal really is to inspire interest in stage rally as something else that you can go out there and do with your license as a new ham or as a ham that's had a license for decades. And of course, also just, sort of an explanation of who I am and what this rally thing is about that you keep hearing about on various nets in the spring and the fall. So I wanted to also give a big shout out to Dale Baxman, K7BAX. Dale's the one that got me into stage rally. And 4 years ago, we were coming out of the end of a dark time. I won't go into detail. You know what I'm talking about. And he said, "Hey, I got some buddies that are going to do this rally thing, and I guess they might need some radio support. I'm not really sure. What do you think about going and checking this out?" And of course, Dale and I are Jeepers, and we've off-roaded together, and we've been kind of industry buddies and stuff. And he's helped me out of a jam with a lot of plumbing stuff because he's an incredible professional plumber and a great radio operator. And I knew him from GMRS, and that's where I got my start in radio. Was actually doing GMRS stuff before I became a ham. And long and short of it was I went to the very first Olympus rally that I'd ever been to. I'd spectated rally before and seen, off-road stuff, and I've seen a lot of parking lot rally, autocross, and things like that. But I'd never been to an actual regional or national stage rally before. And I took my son, who at the time was 13, 12 or 13, and we set up the Jeep and we were positioned as a course marshal. I had just gotten my ham ticket literally the week before. My call sign was KK7 WQA. Try to roll that off the tongue quickly when you're making reports as cars are going by at speed. That's why I changed my call sign to my dad's call sign, N7IQZ. So the very first rally car came by us, and it was Travis Pastrana in his hopped up Subaru. And at the T intersection road that we were acting as a blocker on to protect the rally course, he came by at around 90 miles an hour and about 10 inches off the deck because there was just the littlest lip right before our intersection where there was a bump in the road. And so all four tires were off the ground. He was on the rev limiter as he flew past our position. And as the car touched down, spit gravel like a machine gun behind him. And I turned and looked at my son, and we could not say words. We could not form words because of the amount of adrenaline that was coursing through our veins at that moment. And at that time, I realized, yep, probably going to be doing this forever. And my son loves it, and he is now working on his ham ticket so he can come out and support. And eventually, he has a goal of being a stage captain for stage rally. I've also gotten quite a few people involved, many from PSRG and from other clubs. And the uptick in ham participation in stage rally has been pretty dramatic over the last 3 years as word has kind of gotten out about this. And I guess from what I understand, it used to be a real struggle for them to get hams to come out. So, in the example that I've got on the screen here, this is 2023 Olympus Rally. It was raining a lot. Cami and Robert are in the frame there as troopers. So is Jen Bronk. Robert was acting as stop control ham, or what's called finish ham. Cami is there in the screen working with Jen, logging data coming in from the cars. So they're handing off their time card and they're logging their times because we do both electronic and paper logging to make sure that we've got all the data. And so this is kind of what it looks like to be out there in the field. It happened to be a rainy day. Robert was well prepared with the canvas, and dogs, of course, were there as well. Up in the upper left is my Jeep. Some of you have seen Jeep Floki before or know about Jeep Floki. This is kind of a purpose-built rig that is a commo Jeep that's designed to get to crazy places and tow a trailer there. And it has been awesome outfitted for rally. So in this configuration, I'm running 6 VFOs. I'm running 3 radios. And you see me butted up against a 2-meter pretty high gain setup there from Comet, pounded into the ground on a T-post. And I was acting as relay up on Dayton Peak above Shelton, Washington. This was earlier this year. So here's what we're going to talk about today. And, Brooks, I don't have the screen real estate to moderate chat. So if you are keeping an eye on that, I would appreciate that. And if there's anything urgent, just butt in there and let me know. Okay.
Yep, I got an eye on it.
Cool. Thank you. So we're going to talk about kind of what is stage rally and really the relationship of hams to rally. And then we're going to talk about available roles and how communication integrates into a majority of roles that are within rally volunteering. And then we'll get into the basic equipment requirements, kind of what you need to come out and work rally. And then we'll talk about opportunities that are provided if you happen to have specialty equipment like a lot of you do. Then we're going to talk about basically kind of the core nuts and bolts of how a stage rally is run. We'll look at an example of a ham plan, and we'll talk about how road marshals get deployed. We'll talk about radio protocol and how we run the rally from a radio perspective and logging. And then we'll even get into a little bit of emergency procedures intro. I'm not going to go too in depth there, but I just kind of want to give you an idea because it is such an integral component of why we are there. Hams are essentially the safety net for the rally, especially when we're out there in the middle of nowhere where there isn't necessarily cell service. Like this example here is down at Oregon Trail. It's at the start of the Dalles Mountain Down stage, and I was stage captain for that. You can see various vehicles around. Those are sweeps vehicles that come out and do safety patrol of the rally course and sweep up after a rally is run. And there wasn't a lot of cell reception there, so it was all about radio and access to the repeater up on the mountaintop. So let's talk about what are hams to rally and kind of why this is so important. Basically, rally is run through the grace and volunteerism of people in the community that are motorsport enthusiasts, folks that just love to get out there and see this and help out in any way they can. Thanks to just tons and tons of amateur radio operators over the years, communications infrastructure, safety, and operations are possible. Really, without hams, we just wouldn't have a rally. We could have a lot of volunteers that weren't hams, and we could get away with a lot of the short range stuff with GMRS and FRS radios. But the core content of operations, running the races, keeping everything on time, monitoring for safety, deploying safety resources or emergency responders, that's all via ham radio. All of that is all done by hams. So with hundreds and hundreds of people donating their time and energy to make this run smoothly, hams are truly valued and greatly respected within this community. And this dates back to like 1963 or so in the Pacific Northwest. This used to be one of the points of travel on the World Rally Championship up through the 80s. And again, all the way back into the 60s, this was a ham radio operated event. So if you're a seasoned pro and you've volunteered at a bunch of stuff before, or you're an old hat at ham radio, or if you're a first-time volunteer or a real newbie to ham radio and just recently got your license, there are fantastic opportunities. And one thing to note is that we are really good at providing training. And one of the things that we've done in the last couple of years is really upped the training game so that we can bring in people that are new to this and really remove kind of the nervousness or anxiety about, well, when I get out there, what do I do? We are really embracing an uptick in training and go in depth with every single role and task that is available within the rally. It's also very family friendly. It's also very pet friendly. Pretty much everybody brings their dog if they can, and their kids. And a lot of times you're talking a front row seat at a national event with some rock star driver teams out there in factory sponsored cars, and you're getting passed by at 110, 90 miles an hour. It is pretty darn exciting for sure. So I'm going to talk about available roles here, and just kind of to put this out there, you see sort of the nuts and bolts of stage captain, road marshal, service teams, flying finish, and so on. Guess how many hams are part of this? Yeah, a lot of them. So most of the stage captains, in other words, a person that's responsible for organizing a particular stage and wrangling the volunteers and handling safety and handling communications, that is a ham person. Road marshals are typically hams. The service team has ham members in there. Spectator control, there's always at least one ham because we have spectator areas that need to be policed carefully and keep people back behind the banner tape and things like that. Start and finish hams, I'll tell you what, I don't know that they're on the call because I didn't see them, but Cami and Robert and Brooks and Megan are probably so far the two best start and finish ham operators I've ever seen. And they're very methodical, they're very organized, and it's really cool to hear them. I'm going to be posting to my QRZ page later some recordings of ham rally traffic, kind of edited down so you can sort of hear what some recordings sound like of Olympus rally and kind of how spicy it gets and how busy it gets. But communications is really a pivotal component. And if you're a ham, there's a lot of things that you can come out and do for the rally and really take advantage of your skill set and up your game with regards to applying your radio skills in true practical application.
Devin Jones has her hand up.
Yeah, go ahead. Joan has a question. Can you unmute Joan?
Yeah.
Hey, there you go. Oh, you're muted again. Sorry, one more time, Joan, if you could unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's an accident. Sorry.
No worries.
I don't know how I did that. Here it is, lower hand. I touched something.
Oh, no
on my
worries.
screen.
No worries. Thank you. It's okay. So let's get into core kit for rally support. And one thing that I'll touch on that's kind of a back and forth debate. So dual band radios are fantastic, and what we typically do is mobile radios with a high gain antenna of some sort. Now, that said, a lot of first-time rally supporters will come out and they'll get assigned to a B blocker location, which I will explain in detail as we go along. And they'll use an HT with like a rooftop mag mount antenna. And oftentimes that works perfectly fine. So if that's what you got, bring it and we will place you appropriately. And that's what I want you to know is that there's no real limitations on, oh, I don't have this kind of gear, so I can't come out and do rally. In a lot of cases, you bring what you got and we'll put you in a task that is suitable for the equipment that you brought, because we really appreciate the volunteerism. We want you to get more experience with your equipment. And then if you are in the knowledge access portion of becoming a ham of, well, what else should I buy down the road? I've got budget, what should I be buying? You can learn a ton from coming out and watching what folks are using for radio support for rally. And so I think it's really great to just say, hey, bring anything you got. If it's a single HT and you don't even have an antenna, well, me as chief of communications for the rally, I've probably got adapters for you and a mag mount roof antenna that you can slap on your car or your buddy's car, and that's totally fine. If you've got a 40 to 50 watt mobile radio, that's fantastic. High gain antenna, mag mounts, you bet. The most important thing is you got a full tank of gas in your vehicle so you can recharge your batteries and keep warm if it's cold, sit there and idle it if you need to between stage runnings and stuff. A lot of times you'll get on a rally stage that will be run 1, 2, or maybe 3 times in a day. So then, of course, backup HT radios and batteries for those. Cell phone and a charger. Sometimes we find ourselves in a position where there is a lot of cell coverage, and that's a great backup if simplex communications are not getting out. Pens and pencils are important because we do a lot of logging, and that can be as part of a responsibility for being a road marshal, or just if you are the type of person that, goes to a Mariner game and likes keeping a score sheet, right? Same thing. My wife does that. But if you want to log the cars as they come by, there's no requirement that you do that as a B blocker, for instance, or just a spectator. But it's really fun to do that and to listen to the radio calls and hear their start times and hear their finish times and kind of keep track of what's going on in the rally. There's also some really cool apps that can allow you to track this. There's an app called Sportity. And it's on the App Store for iOS and for Android. And Sportity will let you follow a rally. All you need is basically the rally designator name. It's kind of got like a code phrase or an address phrase. So for Olympus Rally, it's usually Olympus Rally. And you program that into your phone, and you can literally track the rally safe systems that are in all of the rally cars. So you can track the cars as they go down the course if you have cell reception, which is super cool. Of course, we want to dress and pack for variable weather. Olympus Rally is in the early spring. TDF is in the fall. Sometimes Tour de Forest is very hot. I also support Oregon Trail Rally, as do many that are on here. And it can be really, really warm or crazy windy. You just never know. We all wear safety vests or bright colored shirts, safety shirts. If you don't have those, a lot of times we can provide those, or your stage captain can provide those. And of course, it's great to bring food and snacks and an ice chest, books and games and things like that, especially if you got the kiddos along and you want to make sure that they've got stuff to pass the time between rally stages. On a rally stage, when it's active, you might have 80 something entries and the cars are coming by minutely. So every 60 seconds or so, you have a car coming by at speed, and it tends to keep your attention. It's pretty cool. Camp chairs, umbrellas, pop-up tents, those are all fair game. It's great to bring a camp stove along because, if you're in a safe place to cook, you can absolutely fire up the stove and cook some burgers. We have a lot of folks do that. And then a lot of times the rally stages, especially in early spring, they go well after dark. And by the time we're ready for cleanup and evac, it's pitch dark. And so having headlamps and flashlights are a really good idea. Also, I will always encourage folks to bring a fire extinguisher along, just in case you may be near a car that goes off and catches a tree branch in the wrong place and there's a small oil fire or something. You just never know. So it's great to have a fire extinguisher handy. Not required. There's safety crews that will come out there and address the situation really, really quickly. That's what the sweeps teams are for, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. So let's talk about advanced kit. Now, a lot of you know of or have seen drive-over masts or bumper masts or trailer hitch masts, like the examples that I've got on the screen here. There are opportunities, especially with Olympus Rally and Tour de Forest here that are in Shelton, to take advantage of specialty equipment that would kind of fall into the category of a raised antenna, a directional antenna with high gain capabilities, higher wattage capability, and elevation. And the reason is the rallies are run in hills and valleys of pretty dynamic terrain. And so oftentimes we'll find ourselves in a position where start ham cannot radio directly to finish ham, or we can't reach all of the mid-stage hams. And we'll talk about what relay does and the role of a relay, because that is a very important job and a fun job to do, especially if you've got, the wherewithal to, if you've ever run a net, you can absolutely run relay. So some of the things that you might bring are, specifically monoband 2-meter and 70-centimeter separate 50-watt rigs, a mast or some kind of pop-up tower with directional high gain antennas. A lot of you out there have go boxes or, completely standalone portable rigs to where you could say, well, I'm going to park at such and such a spot because it's a safe location, and I'm going to leave my blocker people down there at the rally road, but I'm going to climb 100 feet up this hillside with my portable go box and set up a micro station and be able to provide relay support, or just be able to watch over my intersection and radio in safety reports at the same time. So go boxes are really helpful. Standalone LifePo batteries, obviously. Field deployable solar is great. Off-road vehicle is fantastic because it does open up opportunities for you to get to tougher places. Also, just on a side, prior to a rally, we typically go do trail cleanup events. Off-road vehicles are great for that, especially if you've got a winch or if you've got the ability to drag and tow out down trees and things. We have a long-standing partnership with Green Diamond, who owns most of the land that the rallies are run on in the Shelton area specifically. And every year they really appreciate that they can give us access and give us keys to their Green Diamond gates, and we'll go in there and clean out trails that then later in the year after the rally is run, they're using for logging operation or tree maintenance and things like that. Having an arborist throw bag is really great because a lot of people I've seen go out there and set up a tree height antenna where they just drag an antenna up on a cable. And then of course, any safety equipment that's required for those things. So anchors, guy lines, and things like that. Really, it's about adapting to the terrain and adapting to the conditions. Funniest thing I've seen is chief of comms, and I've been chief of comms now for this will be my first full year. Last year was kind of my first co-chief of comms or in training. We'll have people go out and deploy on a particular corner, and we'll tell them, hey, establish communications in a check-in net that we'll do on a stage, And if you're getting really horrible noise, or you just can't quite make it, or it's really scratchy, you're buried in the squelch, back up like 3 feet. Just move your vehicle like 3 feet in one direction, and you'd be amazed. All of a sudden, crystal clear, full quieting. And it's just because you've got trees, you've got terrain. There's all kinds of metals in the soils. There's different things that are fighting against radio. So again, as an operator, a person interested in ham radio and propagation, it's fascinating to see what tricks you can play to get good comms from one part of the stage to the other. So kind of cool stuff. Really fun to play around with. So let's talk about how a stage rally is run. And this is very much an overview. The topology grid that you see over on the right-hand side, that is from Olympus Rally from this year. That was in April. And so those stages are actual stages. This is actually a capture map from Gaia that kind of walk through what all the different stages are. And I use this designing comms for the stage. Now, in this case, from a radio perspective, we'll talk about radio first, then we'll talk about kind of the different parts of the rally that go on. We have been using for this rally the N7SK machine. Is that correct? Yes, which is the Shelton repeater on the water tower at Shelton. And the Shelton Amateur Radio Club has been a fantastic supporter of the rally. Their club president has been a volunteer for the rally in the past. This last year, he was traveling and couldn't join us, but we've gotten permission for that. We're actually working on building our own standalone 2-meter repeater. We've got some of the components of that already, and there's a couple of guys that I work with that are engineering background folks that have done comms on mountaintop for forestry for a long time, talking about Casey Brooks and others. And really what you see there in this kind of valley is a lot of mountainous terrain, a lot of challenging, deep ravine, little canyons, little hills and stuff like that. And so getting comms to all these places is pretty tricky. Basically, the rally is made up of stages and transits and service, and of course service, refueling, changing tires if needed, and so on and so forth. The stages are timed sections over a particular fixed distance in an exact route. The terrain is varied, a lot of twists and turns, trees, stumps, cattle guards in some places. Basically, the lowest time to complete their stage wins, and the cars typically launch minutely. If it's really dusty, oftentimes the first 10 competitive cars will leave at 2-minute windows, and so they just call that giving them a dust window, and then after that we go to minutely. Transits then are between the stages. They're unscored, but they still have to follow an exact path, and they have a particular amount of time to transit from one stage to the next, or to transit from a stage to service and then back to a stage. And all the cars have to kind of remain in the order that they are seated in. In other words, they basically are seated by time performance prior to this rally, and sometimes that will change. Volunteers then make up a rally infrastructure and really enable the rally through road marshaling, time control workers on the stage, ham radio operators relaying information, the stage captains themselves, safety crews, and then of course sweeps, technical inspectors, service workers, and lots of other roles. So you can come to the rally and you could literally work at service in the refueling pit for cars, or you could come in there and help organize, where the cars park in the service park area. They oftentimes have hams there. So if your thing is, hey, I just want to be around the rally cars and the teams, you can come and do that. If you want to be out on the rally course and blocking a tributary 2-track road or a Forest Service road and have a front row seat to race cars blowing by, you can do that. You can work time controls and be right at the front or the finish of a particular rally and launching the cars at start, or sitting at flying finish or sitting at stop control, where you're actually interacting with the driver teams, and that is super, super fun. In the rally, we take safety very seriously. So within the rally spectrum, the conus of the space of the rally, there's no alcohol, no drugs, no smoking, no bonfires. Camp stoves are okay. And as an aside, I know a lot of folks that do smoke cigarettes. Cigarette smoking, if you're in completely soaking wet, early spring conditions at Olympus Rally, I don't think anybody's going to nick you on that. So, we say that because we're in areas that have forest fire danger, especially in late summer, early fall, or in the summer periods. If it's pouring down rain and you want to burn one, I'm not going to fault you for that. But definitely no bonfires, because we are on private land. The big thing, of course, too, is because we're on private land, pick up any garbage, really kind of follow a leave no trace policy. This is a high-speed event. This picture is from Dalles Mountain Stage that I've captained a couple of times down in Oregon. And yeah, cars get sideways, and you cannot believe how far they throw rocks. I mean, it is unreal. They get these hard carcass, rough terrain tires, and they just pick up everything that's in the path and throw it. So you'll go from what looks like a nice gravel Forest Service road to what becomes hard pack and smooth out at the end of a rally. It's amazing because everything that is loose is blown away from the rally road after you have 40 or 80 cars go through at speed. So really, the volunteers and safety officials are what make this rally possible. So if you think about this from the perspective of service, right? The rally teams are our customers. We are providing a service to them to ensure that the course that they're on is safe, that it is secured from any ulterior traffic, that they have no concern for objects in the roadway or vehicles or animals or people. And so it's important for us to remember that the stage is hot until it's not. When a stage is declared hot, which is a ham radio call that goes out over the net, then nobody crosses the banner tape. Nobody goes over the banner tape line into the roadway. And at that point, the stage is considered hot until the sweeps come through and they run a vehicle called green light. And you'll know it. It's the last sweep truck that comes through, and it's got a great big green beacon light on it. And that tells you, okay, the course is cold. Now we can move about the course and stretch our legs or go pick up stuff or souvenirs, bumpers that fall off cars, all kinds of stuff. From a radio perspective, rally operations are dependent upon the radio communications. And so this slide is an example of what we show general volunteers that aren't necessarily hams, because we want them to understand you're more than welcome to listen in. And so a lot of people bring a scanner, they bring a little Baofeng radio, what have you, but we are really strong on the emphasis that thou shalt not transmit unless thy be ham. That is very serious. And of course, we have had events of QRM in the past, and we've got great techniques and tactics to get past that. And we had a really great example at Olympus that I'll tell you guys a little bit about later. So, the course marshal hams are really responsible for communicating stage course traffic, any incidents with race cars going off or having an impact sort of event, any risk of danger on the course, they're going to radio about. And so only amateur operators are allowed to transmit on our select frequencies for rally operations. And I'll talk about the layout. We basically use simplex for all stage comms, and then we use a repeater and net control for kind of master control of the rally itself. And so those are two different communication pathways, but on a stage, that's the one that is kind of the most spicy and has the most traffic and is the most important to keep clear for safety information to traverse. So as we always tell the general volunteers that are not radio operators, no unlicensed persons will transmit on rally frequency or any ham frequency, except during a dire emergency in order to communicate need for emergency medical aid or to report imminent threat of harm. So kind of following the FCC guidelines there. You're not going to get on a radio unless that is literally your last option and it's life or death. If you're a ham, then of course you're going to be the overwatch to those kind of situations. And so we typically position hams to be within range of non-hams so that you're a shout distance away or a quick run down the road distance away in a dire emergency that a ham can be contacted. We also follow some great safety procedures, which is if a rally driver team passes a crash, the first car stops at the crash to render aid. The next car that comes along goes past the incident to the next ham station and reports it. And then that gets reported into net control. That then deploys sweeps and medical aid if it's necessary. We'll talk more about that as we go. It's very comprehensive. It's very tightly integrated. So let's talk about course opening cars because they're kind of cool. If you're out there on the rally stage, what you'll find is that we run a series of course opening car teams. Sometimes it's as few as 3, sometimes it's as many as 6. If it's an ARA event, an American Rally Association national rally, you will also see a safety delegate car like down in the bottom left. All of these are ham radio operators, either the driver or co-driver or both. And some of these teams have been doing this for literally decades. So the car in the bottom center, the 00 silver car, that's Ron Sorum. He has been running the Alcan 5000, which is considered, I think, a time distance rally for 40 something years. He does race and radio support for that. He is part of a team called Team Fagawi, along with Steve Parrott up in the upper right. They basically provide a paid for service to come out and be course opening cars for rallies all across the country. So these guys put on miles like you can't believe. Both of those Subarus have in excess of 300,000 miles on them. And they maintenance them themselves. These cars go everywhere. They go over all kinds of crazy terrain. They've got advanced radio gears. What I found too is that a lot of the long-term old guard rally support team, they really tend to like Yaesu gear. And I've looked into why that is, because I'm kind of an ICOM person that some of you may know. And ICOM works awesome. It just seems that there is some lore around Yaesu radio tied to rally that goes back years and years and years. So if you look at any one of these cars, especially for the guys that have been doing this for decades, you'll find, like old Yaesu 8900s or 9000s. I mean, just super, super simple analog 2-meter, 45 watt, 50 watt radios. And they're just kind of nuts and bolts simple. And they use them for the Alcan and stuff like that. So you don't typically find real fancy whiz bang. You're never going to see a D-Star radio or something that's got digital modes in it and stuff like that. They're just using core, reliable 2-meter solid stuff that can take a beating. Typically doesn't have fan to make a bunch of noise, has big heat sink, stuff like that. It's just kind of an observation I've made that I thought I'd share, but it's kind of cool. But all the safety car teams, they basically come out in an order to open a stage. And so you'll see them go by, and as a course marshal ham, you basically report over the stage frequency net as any of these cars go by. So during course opening, when you see a safety car, you'll say, okay, instruction 17 passed by car 0, instruction 5 passed by 00, 000, and so on. They basically start with 000 and the safety delegate car, and then they kind of count down. And what happens is the 000 car comes through and basically does a safety inspection of the stage, and they're coming along at a pretty slow speed. They're probably 25 mile an hour, and they will make frequent stops to make adjustments. So if they see that a car from a road blocker is just too close to the tape or too close to a corner, they'll stop and they'll say, hey, go ahead and back your car up another 50 feet. Or if they see some banner tape down, they might stop and jump out and tie up the banner tape to make sure it's secure. Or they might make adjustments to any number of things, any kind of road hazard. 00 car comes through a little bit faster, still has the capability to stop if needed and make adjustments to things. 0 car comes through at about 80% of rally race speed. And so that's typically driven by somebody that's got race experience. So Gavin Galino, KG7 BDF, and Callie Sorensen. Callie is Lee Sorensen's daughter. Lee is down there in the safety delegate car. He works for ARA. They come through at darn near race speed. They're not typically stopping, but it's one last safety check to make sure everything looks good. There's nothing wrong with the race course. There's no washouts all of a sudden, something weird. And when they finish their run, they basically, each of the 0 cars go through and they declare at the end of the stage when they get to stage finish, I've completed my checklist. Everything looks good from my perspective. Proceed on. When 0 car comes through, they're like, checklist is complete. You're okay to declare the stage hot. And at that point, you would have a note back to the stage captain over radio. The stage captain, depending on the rally that you're doing, they run them sometimes differently. Net control will declare the stage hot, or the stage captain will declare the stage hot. It depends on the situation and the rally that you're in. So if you are deployed as a road marshal, and the reason that I say that and kind of bring this up front is, for a lot of folks coming into rally for the first time, road marshal is a great introduction to rally, and it is oftentimes the first thing that you want to do as a new volunteer, as a new radio operator, or even a seasoned radio operator, because it's a great way to become familiar with really the nuts and bolts of what's going on in the rally from a radio perspective and from a race perspective, from a team dynamic perspective. And so when you get out there, you'll be meeting up in the morning with a stage captain to go out and deploy on a rally stage, and you'll be assigned a position. That could be a corner, could be an inside and outside corner, could be a blocking T road or an angle road. It could be 2-track. It could literally be motorcycle trail. There's, a lot of different things that we have to block. And so there's banner guard and so on. But really, your responsibility is to ensure that no non-rally traffic can enter the courseway of the rally stage. And so that could be anything from dog walkers and hikers to mushroom harvesters to salal pickers. There's all kinds of folks that come out there. We've even spotted black bear. We've had deer. There's all kinds of things that we want to make sure are not going to be in the roadway when a rally car comes through at speed. So really, your goal is to find a safe spot to watch the rally from, where you can kind of keep an eye on things, keep your vehicle out of the rock path of any rock wash from a corner, and make sure that you've got good radio propagation to at least get back to the start ham. And that means that if you see anything go wrong, if you see a crash incident or an off or a mechanical breakdown, we get mechanicals more than anything else, right? More than crashes, we just get people where they broke something on the car and they got to pull off the road and they're a partial blocking hazard. You got to radio that into the start and let them know, hey, I'm at mile blah, 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 at instruction blah, blah, blah. And car, 3.5 is off to the right side of the road, partially blocking, showing an okay sign, right? Those are the kinds of radio traffics that, you'd be responsible for. You also want to make sure that you don't ever park in a run out path. So if you're at the end of a straight and there's a right-hand sweeper and you're parked on the outside of that right-hand sweeper, you want to make sure that you're not in the run out path if they don't make that corner. So you got to be, up on the berm or out of the way or back enough away that your vehicle doesn't become a barricade for them if they miss that corner. Pretty straightforward. And really, you're parking your car as a visual roadblock to people that are coming towards the rally route. So you might go back up the trail a ways, park your car across the trail to make sure that anybody coming down with a motorcycle, an ATV, a Jeep, what have you, sees that vehicle and goes, whoa, something's going on. And it makes them stop, get out, walk up and see what's going on. And then they find you and you say, hey, you are more than welcome to hang out and join the rally and visit here with us and watch the cars go by. The stage is going to start at such and such a time and it's going to finish at such and such a time, after which you're happily able to drive on this road, but not right now. And we've had those conversations a lot. A lot of times we'll have families from employees of Green Diamond that will come out because they know those roads really well. And so they'll come out on a back road that they know tees up with the rally route. They'll park their vehicle safely. They'll come up with their camp chairs and they'll hang out and they'll just watch the rally right alongside you. And they're really nice people. They're super cool. So stay in a safe location. Never stand on the outside of corner, never stand in the middle of a hot stage road ever, or let anybody else do that. Always stand behind the banner guard or well off the road. I will share an example with you. In my second year of doing rally, I was standing behind the banner guard, very closely behind the banner guard, and I was getting video with my dad's old iPhone 12 Pro Max because it took really good video. So I was leaning out over the banner tape as a car came by, and I was kind of looking to my left because the car was going to pass me left to right, and it was probably doing 70-ish, and we were on a really, really gentle sweeper corner. Doesn't matter. Red car, car 70, and I forget the name of the car team. They flung a rock up that I saw in my peripheral vision when it was probably 3 feet from my head. It hadn't bounced. It came right off the tire and was headed right for me. And it smacked me just below my left temple, right below temple and right above jawbone. And it almost put me on the ground. And it wasn't even a big rock. It was probably 1.5 inch rock. And I literally saw stars. It was the first time in my life that I remember ever actually seeing stars. And it drew blood and the rock hit the ground and I almost fell over. And my son looked and his eyes were as big as saucers. He's like, are you okay? And there's video of this. And all I can say was, I will be. And I couldn't find the rock as try as I might because it was in a field of rocks. But it just goes to show it's wise to stay back from the banner tape. You can take a rock kiss. Robert Sartor, KJ7JXM, he has a dent in the side of his Jeep and he has the rock that made that dent. And he has that rock autographed by Travis Pastrana, who he cornered at Oregon Trail Rally this year. Earlier, he always carries the rock with him in the Jeep whenever he comes to rally because he's always wanted to get it signed by Travis Pastrana. So at stage start, he ended up talking to him and they had a great chat and he explained the rock hitting the Jeep. And he got his rock autographed by Travis Pastrana, which is super cool. And I'm completely jealous. So just goes to show parking your vehicle and where you stand matter. They're very important. And of course, you want to protect your radio gear. You want to be able to see the action and be able to keep an eye on the safety course aspect of why you're there. But keep yourself safe first. That's the first priority. if you do encounter non-rally traffic, there are ways that we deal with that. And basically, if somebody kind of gets uppity about, hey, I own this land or I've got access to this land or what have you, we typically will keep a copy on hand of the permit that we have from Green Diamond to run the land in a closed state for that roadway. And a lot of times people, oh, okay, whatever, they'll go off in a huff. But it's just really important that we invite them to try to participate by sitting there watching and just wait till the rally route's done. The other thing that you'll see a lot of are media folks, and we keep an eye on media folks over radio as well. So when we see a media vehicle go by before the opening, you as a ham, as a stage marshal or course marshal, you're going to radio in and say, yep, I was just passed by what looks to be a media vehicle, silver SUV going course direction. I'm at instruction 5. And every single instruction that has a radio at it will call that media person out until they stop. And the media people, depending on their credentials, oftentimes have the latitude to park a vehicle way off the rally course and take up position to get the best photographs and videos, or even drone equipment stuff will go up. And you'll see that typically an orange vested person, which can be a little confusing, is unrestricted. Blue is typically unrestricted. Red is restricted and must stay in visual range of you or of a blue vested person. So blue and orange, they've signed their life away. They've signed all kinds of waivers. They can go wherever they want. They can lay down in a ditch next to the rally route to get the shot that they want. You typically won't see them do that. We still want to radio about where they are so that we have an eye on them. We have had media people get injured and have to call in aid for them over the radio. And there was a guy at Olympus 2 years ago that took a rock to the head that was a sizable rock and knocked him out, and he went away in an ambulance. He was fine, but it rang his bell pretty good. That was all handled over radio. That was ham radio operators that took care of getting that person squared away with medical care. So let's talk a little bit about communications overview and really orient to how comms work at the rally. Again, being the safety net for the rally, folks are basically deployed at strategic points to ensure good communications over the whole of each stage. And there are things called A's and B location, A blockers and B blockers. And that is the simplest parlance to designate an A is a location that is required by the clerk of the course to have a ham radio operator at it. A B is we would really like to have a ham there, but it's not required. And then sometimes there's C locations where we'll say, hey, if we don't have enough hams, no problem. But if we do have a ham extra, please put them there. So A, B's, and C's are all locations where you'll see called out on a route book that are blocker locations for sure. And so that means we could put a person there that isn't a ham radio operator at a C location or even a B location, but we'd really prefer to have hams at all of these if we could. If we had the luxury of enough hams, we would put a ham at every single blocker location we could, because it just enhances the margin of safety. So net control is typically on a dedicated frequency, usually on a repeater. It'll typically be a 2-meter repeater. In some cases, it'll be a 440 machine. Sometimes that'll be a repeater that belongs to the rally. A lot of times it's a club repeater that is in the area, like N7SK. Or the Capital Forest machine has been used in the past down there. And basically net control monitors everything that they can hear. So my friend Beth, W3ETH. So her call sign is basically her name, like W Beth in Leet speak, 3 being a B. Beth will set up a huge travel trailer with her husband, generator, standalone, big mast antennas. They'll set up at the airport in Shelton, and they can hear a lot of the simplex traffic from the different rally stages, but they're also monitoring N7SK. And so they're hearing about everything that's going on. As stages overlap, you'll have basically 3 stages with activity at a time. Maybe you've got 14 stages over a weekend. You'll have a stage that is in early setup. You'll have a stage that is in near road closed condition where safety cars are going through, and you'll have a stage that's hot running race cars. And so with that, there's a lot of traffic that goes on. That's why each of the stage frequencies, every stage has its own dedicated simplex frequency, and then the stage captain and typically start and finish ham are also monitoring net control. This is where not only dual band, but dual VFO radios are very, very helpful. Or you could run a separate radio. That's totally fine too. So you've got a stage captain, a start ham, a course marshal, mid-stage, and a finish ham. The mid-stage ham sometimes is also a relay, although that's not mentioned here. We try to find a high spot for mid-stage. So if there is any communications issue, any propagation issue, from any other point on the race course to another, the relay ham can jump in and relay that traffic. The start ham and finish hams are the busiest on the course while the race is running because they're literally calling out every car that starts and every car that finishes. Then if any car doesn't finish, then you'll typically have the course marshal hams get involved with reporting where that car is and its condition. The other thing too is that we also call out, like I mentioned before, every single course opening car that comes by. So at the beginning of a stage, when it's getting prepared to be opened, that's when, as a course marshal, you get pretty busy because you're calling out every course opening car. Every stage captains will sometimes run the route, media vehicles, all kinds of stuff. So it's pretty busy right there up until race time. And then once race time goes hot, you're not calling out the race cars as they come by. Only start and finish hams are calling those by. The only intervening traffic you would have at that point is if you observed a safety hazard or a car going off or a mechanical, something that stops a car on the roadway near your position. And of course, we also still identify every 10 minutes if you are transmitting, and we keep the frequency open for emergency use as much as possible. And we just follow FCC guidelines. The signs to your right indicate an upcoming, yellow indicates an upcoming ham station or ham location along the course. The blue sign you would have at your location or on the windshield of your vehicle or on a signpost that's at your location. The protocols are pretty straightforward. All the hams that are on course are encouraged to keep a competitor car log, and I'll show you an example of that here in a little bit. Once the competition starts, basically under normal operations, you're not really going to be doing much except for listening, and it's great to be logging. I always print out logs for people that I hand out as a comm specialist on all the stages that are on right in the rain. So you bring a pencil and you can write on them in the rain. They won't degrade in the rain, so you can keep a plastic clipboard and be standing out there in the pouring down rain and still car log if you want to. It's a lot of fun. And of course, what you're doing basically as a course marshal is making sure that the course is secure. But when you're logging, it allows us to do really clever things like, okay, I logged that car 1, 2, 3 came out in 1, 2, 3 order. I just saw cars 2 and 3 pass me. I haven't seen car number 1. All right, that's a radio into start control. Start control, this is instruction 7. I've had cars 2 and 3, but I have not seen car number 1. And at that point, start control will intervene and they'll say, okay, has anybody seen car 1 at any location? And then you'll typically see, oh yeah, at instruction 3, I saw car 1 come by, but we haven't seen him past that. Well, that's all right. Let's check and see what's going on. Somebody might, be able to get eyes on them. Usually what ends up happening is if a race car comes by and they see a car stopped on the side of the road and they have their okay sign out, they will get to the end of the race course and they will report that to stop control. And they'll say, hey, we just passed car 1 at like mile 2.5 and they were on the right-hand side of the road. They're not blocking and their okay sign is out. Great. That gets radioed back. We now have accountability for that car. We move on. We don't worry about that car being on the roadway, or I should say off the roadway. That does not stop the race. That's just kind of an example. The other thing that's really important is that the ham radio points are marked in the competitor's route book. So you got a co-driver sitting there in the co-driver seat, and they see when they're coming up on a ham location. So if they have passed a car crash that another car has stopped at to render aid, they go past that and they go to the next ham location, they stop and they tell the radio operator, hey, there's a crash 1 mile back, it's car blah, blah, blah. They're upside down on the left-hand side of the road. There's a car stopped there. It looks like they need aid because their red sign is out. They're not okay, right? Now, the overlapping system that really protects the driver teams is that for most of these bigger rallies, the national rallies, they're also running what's called Rally Safe inside the car. Rally Safe is OnStar on steroids. It is a rally electronically monitored satellite and cellular communication system that literally keeps track of everything going on in the car. And if that car stops, it has an OK button or an SOS button, and it literally tracks all of the details of the car. It can track how many rolls the car has had in a rollover. It will track G's of impact. It will track fire suppression deployment if the fire suppression deployment has gone off in the engine bay. It is the nervous system of a rally car, and it is monitored by the ARA back at the service park, back at net control. So we are an overlap to that. In a regional rally, you don't typically have that. So like for Tour de Forest, we're probably not running Rally Safe. So we are the core safety net for that, to make sure that everything gets reported. If a team needs aid, we render aid immediately. So if there's an emergency, sorry, go ahead.
There's a question in the chat here for you.
Go ahead.
Pete is asking, what does instruction mean?
Great question. So on a route book, you will have, depending on the rally, either an instruction or a mileage point. And what this means, in fact, I've got, that's a great segue. Why don't we just go to the graphic for that? Thank you for that segue. Oh, that worked out well. Basically, this is what it looks like to have a rally stage. And imagine, if you will, that this rally stage is super curvy and up and down hills and through the trees and through open spots and through logged areas and whatever. Every single one of those green arrows and orange arrows would be typically an instruction. Every corner would be an instruction. An instruction is simply defined as something in the route book that the driver team sees that gives them an instruction of what to do at that stage on the course. So if it's a left-hand sweeper, it's going to indicate there's a left +3 or whatever the corner angle is. And I'm not going to go into too much detail about how they determine the severity of corners and things like that. But anything in the road that is going to be a navigable feature and or any intersecting road, those are all marked in the route book. A's and B's, and then sometimes C's are marked in the route book, and they will all be given an instruction number. And the instruction numbers are basically sequential from the start all the way through to the finish. I've seen rally stages that have 30 instruction numbers. I've seen them have as few as 7. It really depends on the length of the rally course. So as an example, were this the stage called Wildcat. Wildcat can be anywhere from 14 to I think 22 miles long, all off road. It'll have dozens of instruction numbers that that pertain to side roads, 2-track roads, Forest Service roads, logging roads, motorcycle trails, anything you can think of. Those would typically all be given some kind of instruction number or a blocker location. And so those are called in the route book, and they are also called out by the clerk of the course, who sends that list to me as chief of comms. And then I make sure that hams are assigned at each one of those locations. So I work in cooperation with the stage captains, and I say, okay, on your stage, you've got 5 priority A blocker locations, and you've got 6 more B blocker locations. So let's see if we can get 11 hams out there on this stage to handle everything for these blocker locations and your mid stage. And maybe because there's a big hill on your stage, you're also going to need a mountaintop relay, somebody that can get to a high spot somewhere mid stage. So that necessarily would be, some elevation, clear view for propagation, wouldn't necessarily have an instruction number. So if you're a course marshal, the instruction number is akin to your tactical ID. So you would key up if you saw an incident, or let's just say it's pre-race, 00 car just passed instruction 17, N7IQZ. That tells start, without them having to have any two-way conversation with you. Okay, safety car just passed instruction 17. I've got good radio communications with that person. Great, moving on. Versus, okay, I'm at instruction 3. I just saw a car miss a corner and roll over and roll 3 times. Very calmly, you're going to radio in, stage start. This is instruction 3, priority traffic. Pause, go ahead, priority traffic. This is instruction 3. We've just had a rollover incident left-hand side of the road. I believe it's car number blah, blah, blah. I think they need aid. That's really how that traffic would happen. The other illustration that I wanted to make with this graphic is to just kind of visually depict where all the hams are. You've got a start ham, a relay ham, a finish ham. You've got A and B blocker hams, and then typically net control, which is oftentimes back at Shelton Airport service area, or down in Oregon Trail. It's up on top of Dalles Mountain, or it's at another place further south on the next day on Sunday instead of Saturday. But these are all the locations and kind of why ham radio operators are so integral to being able to run the rally. So, to answer the question succinctly, yeah, pretty much any single main road or logging road is going to at least have an instruction. Most of the B blocker locations with 2-track trails or farmer field roads, they will, especially if you can pull a car into it, it's probably got an instruction associated with it. Some rallies, instead of using instructions, will use mile points. So down in Oregon, we'll use mile markers instead of instructions. And so when you're deployed onto a course at your team meeting at the top of the day, your stage captain's going to lead you in, but beforehand, they will have assigned you to a location and they'll say, okay, we're going to roll in course direction, reset your odometer at stage start sign, and track in 3.2 miles and look for a place to pull off on the right-hand side. That's your spot. And that will typically be written out somehow, and you'll have instructions on where to go. So hopefully that answers that question. That was a great transition to this slide too. I just made this, Brooks. You like this? Um,
That looks good. I
so
like it.
cool. So here is an example of a ham plan. Do not be frightened. Notice the color coding. This is the new Devin Hamilton format of the ham plan. It is evolutionary from the infamous Lee Chambers KI7SS, who was chief of communications for the prior 30 years for Olympus Rally and Tour de Forest and other regional rallies that happen in and around the Shelton area. I learned a ton from Lee. Lee is awesome. He also is a ham teacher and teaches classes on general and amateur extra. He's been a contributor to the community around communications for decades, and I can't thank him enough. So he had an original kind of spreadsheet format that I evolved into what this looks like today. And basically, this gives you the core content of all the people that are responsible for a rally, including chief of controls, the landowner themselves, net control, who the chief of communications is, clerk of the course, assistant clerk of the course, the net control information, the backup information, what the chat frequencies are, alternate stage frequencies, which we've used in the past, and then all of the details about each of the stages. So you'll see the stages are listed out as SS 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So on this particular time, Saturday, April 20th, this was literally the hand plan from this year. You would have first car out marked at 10:21. If you want to think about when the road is closed, back that off by about 2 hours. So, around 8:21, you would see 0 cars coming through and closing the road to be prepared to, run the race. You would have all your people deployed out there. So we typically start pretty early in the morning. I'm going to go to a little bit more detailed view here so you can see a little bit better the details of each of the stages. And these are deprecated frequencies. So while some of these might be reused, if you're ever really interested in just listening in because you've got ears that can reach into that area from your geo, you can always reach out to me, email, and I'll send you the rally frequencies a couple days before the rally. But the stage frequency is simplex, and they are picked by doing pre-testing and pre-scouting in the weeks before the rally. Of course, we go out there, we look for QRM issues, QRN issues. I've actually run into some of our rally frequencies being used as local rag chew nets for simplex that are in and around the Shelton area, because there's some guys that live up in cabins in the hills, and they'll talk to people that are down in Shelton at town near the water tower, and so I try to be a good steward and communicate with those people ahead of time and ask them if that's a common rag chew. And if it is, I'll bump off that frequency and use something else. So these are deprecated frequencies. These won't necessarily be used, but a lot of times we'll reuse these just in a different order, different place. It just depends on propagation conditions and other factors. You can also see that I've got start hams listed out in most of these cases, mid-stage hams and finish hams. The mid-stage hams aren't necessarily tied to a particular location because we might not know that yet. We might not know that until the morning of, when the stage captain makes the decision about where to put those various mid-stage hams. But we always try to pick who are going to be our start and finish hams at least 2 weeks before the rally, so that they can be prepared for that and make sure that their equipment is in good working order, because we're obviously relying on them for a lot of radio traffic. This is what a ham log looks like. Pretty simple. There's a couple different versions of this. This is kind of an older deprecated version. I've got a new version now that's formatted nicely for Right in the Rain paper. Logging the competition cars is very useful to the rally, especially for safety. It's also a ton of fun. And I just find, if you are a motorsport fan, being able to hear the radio calls, log those start times, mark the time that car passes your location, and then mark the time that they finished, that's great. So that's why you see a start time, a check time, and a finish time. The check time is when they pass your location. And of course, you've got all the other data for your stage, the stage number and date, your call sign, the position that you're located in, the instruction that you're at, what time of day it is. Sometimes we'll call a bogey time and a start time for the stage. And then there's car order. If we're lucky, sometimes, not all the time, sometimes we get a competitor list ahead of time. Sometimes the course opening cars will show up at the stage start, and they'll have a printed out list of all the race cars in the order that they're going to launch in, with the start time listed. And so you can use that as a checklist and check that off. And that also helps you determine if you've had a car come by and you're missing a car, for instance. So sometimes we have that luxury. So if we don't have that, then the logging becomes even more important. And again, as I mentioned, if a car doesn't pass your location within 3 cars of its starting sequence, then you are going to radio stage start. The stage captain will always be listening. But once the stage is hot, and let's say I've been a stage captain in the past many times, several times Brooks has been my start ham. So once the stage goes hot, I turn it over to Brooks as, if you will, simplex net control for the stage. I will talk no more on the stage unless there is some kind of real issue that I need to get involved with and bark some instructions or holler at the sweep people or something like that, or ask for more information from you as a course marshal if you're out there somewhere on the course. But typically, the start ham is in charge once the course goes hot and we're waiting on race cars to start. And so you'll be interacting with them. So if you have a missing car, you would say stage start. This is instruction 7. I've had car blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah come by. I'm missing car number XYZ. And you are going to mark the time that you noted that yourself. And then at some point, you might immediately have stage start come back and say, have any of the stations seen that car, or next nearest station? And the protocol that I've seen used is you go backwards from the person that called it out. So if instruction 7 called out, I'm missing this car, then instruction 6 would be the first person to radio and say, I haven't seen that car. Instruction 5 would then say, yeah, I saw that car 2 minutes ago. They passed me at speed. And now we know that car is between instruction 5 and 6. So if we don't hear anything else from that car, then we're going to rely on the race teams to see, was that car okay? And that's where we get into emergency procedures. Basically, every race team has got a route book, and on the back of that route book, in a big spiral bound route book, there are 2 plasticized signs. One of them is okay, and one of them is SOS. Looks like that. The goal is that if a car has a stop for any reason, the competitor, or co-driver can jump out and flag that they're okay, or flag SOS that they're not okay and that they need help. If they're holding an SOS, the next driver that comes along, by the rules of engagement, must stop. They have to stop and render aid, see what's going on, see if they can help them in some way, deploy fire extinguishers, first aid, give them water, whatever it is that they need. The very next car along the race course will stop if there's an SOS or if there's an obvious sign of trouble. Now, here's another interesting factor that I'll just layer into this. If you're in a race that is using the rally safe system, as a race car approaches a crash where there has been a significant G impact, and maybe that car is upside down, that rally safe will, by proximity, trigger the rally safe SOS in the arriving vehicle that's coming up to the scene, sometimes well before they're there. So they know to stop. They know right away. At the same time, that car that crashed will be radioing data back to net control that car is off, that it had a triple rollover and a 10G impact, and they're sitting there upside down. There's no sign of fire. There's no sign of deployment of fire suppression. Oh, boom, they just hit their okay button inside the car. They're okay. That resets the rally safe to all the other cars that are in proximity, and they can go on because they've indicated from a button push inside the car they're okay. If that is then double checked by the fact that the co-driver's crawled out of the car and is holding up the green okay sign over their head, okay, it's a bad crash. That sucks for them and their car. We'll come and get that car later with sweeps, but they're okay. So that's kind of how this works as an overlapping integrated system of protection, that, even right down to just a visual, I'm okay or I'm not okay, then you're going to know that right away. So if there is an SOS, that is an automatic stage stop condition. So if you are a ham operator as a road marshal, you see a car go off near your instruction, and you see the co-driver pop out of the car or the driver pop out of the car, and they hold up an SOS to you, and you are in fact upwind of them, uproad of them, meaning that you're for sure looking at the SOS, not the green sign that's on the back of the SOS sign. Keep in mind, you got to think that you're going to radio that in immediately. Instruction 12, I've got a car off on the left-hand side of the road. Driver is outside of the car with an SOS, red SOS over his head. Right away, that is a stage stop condition. They'll stop any additional race cars that are coming. If you have other helpers at your position, you and every other ham that heard that SOS call go out over the air immediately get close to the banner tape and hold your arms in a big X above your head to indicate to any race traffic stage is stopped because there's been an SOS or a crash condition up ahead. So that's basically just two hams and a big X, exactly like Joan is showing out, but above your head, like a big X, exactly. And that tells them, slow down, there's a crash ahead, or stage is stopped because there's been an incident. And again, as professionalism would overall, it's very important, even in the case of seeing a severe collision, immediately but very calmly inform stage captain and stage start by radio or mobile phone if you can't reach them, that this has happened. Now I'll share an example with you of something that really rattled me this year. So I was stage captain for Oregon Trail Rally. Oregon Trail Rally has their own awesome chief of comms. His name is Brian Morris, and I've worked in partnership with him as a stage captain, and he runs a real tight ship. And so we had an awesome comms plan. We got mountaintop repeater, just fantastic communications. I was at the end of my stage that was run in two different directions. It ran in the uphill direction, and then later in the day, it ran in the downhill direction. In the downhill direction in the second half of the day, I was at the end of the stage. Lakea Sieverts, K7TET, was at the start of the stage as a co-captain. Well, about 20 minutes into the race, we had a car hit a set of ruts in the roadway right near flying finish, meaning they're in front of the spectator area for everybody to see. They hit a set of ruts that was about 20 yards in front of the flying finish flags. They are flat out as fast as they can to get the minimal time that they can. The car bucked rear end up, came down on the front left quarter, kind of sideways. That launched the car up and over a berm through a cattle fence. And that car was, when I looked and saw it happen, because I watched it as it happened, that car got to about 40 feet in the air. I think they said it rolled like 6 or 7 times, and was like a 13 or 14 G impact, and rolled into this cattle field. Luckily, the cows were all hanging out down by us at stop control, which was about a quarter of a mile from flying finish, because we were very interesting to the cows. So there were no cows near where the car crashed. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought those guys were severely injured. And so I grabbed my radio and I very calmly said, net control, priority traffic. This is stop control, Dalles Mountain down. And he says, go ahead. I said, I've got a bad car crash, a right hand side of the road, right at flying finish. I don't see any movement. And I sat there on radio. I cleared the channel. He immediately was in communication with the Rally Safe folks. Rally Safe said, yeah, we've registered the crash. There's been no fire system deployment. He then radioed back. The timing is a little fuzzy now. He radioed back to me at some point and said, they've hit the OK button in their car. And I said, okay, I still see no movement. And then I said, okay, wait a minute. I've got a person crawling out of the car. That person got up, immediately fell over, which you could almost hear all the spectators like gasp. And then the driver or co-driver, the other person, got out of the car, got the other person back up on their feet. They literally checked each other out. And I radioed, okay, I've got 2 occupants of the vehicle out and walking around. And they immediately went over to the fence where they went through, and they were waving other drivers to slow down near the ruts or watch out for the ruts, because at that time of day, shadow had crept across the road from the cornfield, and the ruts could no longer be seen by a driver coming down that hill at speed. So whereas it could have been as simple as 12 inches to the left or 12 inches to the right, and they would miss these divot ruts that were created from that being the start location on the run earlier in the day, and all of the tires churning up all that gravel. When it was shadowed, you couldn't see it, and it became a ramp. And so immediately I said, okay, we need a driver's bulletin. I radioed start control, and I got a hold of Lakea, and I said, I need a driver's bulletin right away to all drivers leaving your position that there are ruts in the center of the road about 20 yards up from flying finish. They need to stay left or right of those. We've had a car off. And so she immediately began intervening, telling every driver as they come up to hand in their time card and get their time, okay, hey, there's a driver's bulletin. There are ruts in the road. There's been a crash at flying finish about 20 yards up from flying finish. You got to watch out for these ruts. Stay left or right. So that's how we handled that. There was at the time no need to roll aid. It was a very tense situation for a few minutes because the aid people were actually sitting at a spectator, and they had a very, very strong urge as lifesavers and protectors and first responders to just drive right onto the race course because they saw the crash and they were like, these guys have got to be hurt. We literally had to have a ham restrain them from going onto the course because we still got race cars coming at speed. So at that point, one thing that I want to emphasize is that the system that we follow in a national rally is that ARA officials back in the booth make the call as to whether or not a stage is stopped or not. However, if you see an SOS, it's stopped. No question. Done. If one of those guys popped out of the car and they held up an SOS to anybody that could see it, or if they hit the SOS button in their car, stage is stopped immediately. Anybody that sees a driver coming, a car coming, big X over their head, waving them down to slow down, and we would immediately send aid out onto the course as soon as it was safe to do so. So that's just a real world example of something that happened to me this year. Really got my attention because I'd never seen a bad crash. Now, fun fact, the crew chief for that team came out to the car, looked at the car, spent about an hour looking over the car in this farmer's field before our friend Anna, driving a great big case tractor, literally forklifted the car and drove it off the field, picked it up like it was a Lego item. The crew chief said, yep, I think this cage is okay. We're probably going to be able to reshell it, and this will still be our race car. The safety equipment in the vehicles is absurdly protective. I mean, overbuilt. If anybody has engineering background and understands the concept of safety margin and overbuilding, we live in a world of 150% rules. Rally, they kind of do this at a 300 percentile sort of factor. So they walked away. I mean, bumps and bruises, sure. The restraint system, they use a helmet head restraint system inside the vehicle. They use 5-point harnesses. They have, deep bucket seats. They just can't move in the vehicle. So while the crash is very, very violent, potentially, they're just not taking a lot of damage, and rolls are beneficial. An impact into a tree, not a good thing. An immediate stop, bad thing. Rolls are what you want. If the car is rolling, it's dissipating energy. So this also speaks again to the importance of remaining professional and calm. I'll tell you what, my heart rate was up. My adrenaline was pumping. I wanted to yell out over the radio. Nobody would have heard what I was saying. It wouldn't have made sense. You got to stay very, very calm. Radio what you're seeing as you see it, give them the data in as professional a tone as possible. That is very important to the safety of the teams. Hopefully that all makes sense. So we've talked about all these details. Basically, ham radio operators are the safety net of the rally, and I can't emphasize that enough. When an incident has happened, that's where sweeps and emergency crews get involved. The sweep teams are pretty cool. They're kind of the rock stars of the rally if you're a volunteer. If you find out about sweeps and you're interested in sweeps, it's something that you work up to and you can go through a probationary period. They have a very specific set of requirements with regards to vehicle, equipment, and training. First aid training, being a radio operator, there's physical fitness requirements. Think about all the stuff that you would have to do to be a fire person or a first aid responder or an ambulance driver, but then add ham radio to that. But then also have off-road experience and vehicle recovery experience, maybe even some mountain rescue or extraction experience, right? They have a really cool set of skills. They train really hard. They work really hard. And I don't think these guys get paid much, if anything, other than maybe a stipend. In some cases, some rallies do pay them, depending on the organization. But it's pretty cool because either the driver or co-driver or both will be ham radio operators. When a car goes off or has a bad crash, if there's a stop or something like that, they usually come in to extract those cars, get them off the race course. If they're blocking and we have to pause a stage, so let's say we've had a car that's literally stalled and we can't move it from the middle of the road, it's blocking. Well, we would stop all race cars from going. We'd call a pause to the stage. We'd send the sweep vehicles down. They'd go and get that car off the stage, flat tow it to a safe spot or flat tow it all the way through to finish, and then we would resume the stage. So sweeps are pretty important. The reason that I mentioned them in this context for this talk today is that when they're on the course, they're chatty. They're pretty chatty. They end up on stage frequency. They also have their own back channel frequency, and they're also in communication with net control. So their responsibility is to keep the stage captain apprised of the situation and net control, and then they communicate with each other on stage frequency so that we as road marshals know that they're out there and what they're up to, and we can hear their status. If you're at the end of a stage and finish, sweep teams will come through after the green light truck goes through, meaning that the stage is now declared cold. You may end up departing the stage to finish out your day following the green light truck. You may get stuck behind them while they're doing a vehicle extraction. If you can walk up and watch, that's really cool, or listening to the radio traffic, that's really cool. And then they'll get you out of there as soon as they can once they've got those vehicles out safely. But they're basically given comms priority once they're on course, because if sweeps are on course, they're either in the middle of rendering aid or doing extractions or just making sure that the course is clear to be rendered cold. Pretty straightforward with those guys. Super fun. A lot of neat vehicles. There's some great pictures and videos of Sweep floating around the internet, and they're a hugely integral part of the rally. Otherwise, their job is to sit at stage start, and if nothing happens, what they always say, if you walk up to them, "How you going?" They're like, "Yeah, quiet day is a happy day." They don't necessarily want to go out and do anything until the stage has been run successfully and all cars have gone through, in which case they go through at their what they call transit speed, which is approximately 35 miles an hour. I'm holding up air quotes, approximately 35 miles an hour. And they will make sure that there are no cars left on the course, and green light goes through. Green light also collects any paperwork from stage start and stage finish and hands that into the race officials for scoring, because stage start and stage finish have logging that they do for scoring purposes. And it's pretty cool. So right there, I want to just take pause because this has been kind of a fire hose of information, I realize, and I'm being respectful of time. I think we're doing pretty good on time. We've got a few minutes left here. I want to just express a couple of things before I take questions. Any ham with the will, any kind of vehicle that can survive a basic dirt road, a decent radio and an antenna can come out and do this. So if you don't have a car, if you are a non-driving person, you can find tons and tons of other volunteers that will happily have you as a ride-along. They would love to have you as a ride-along because it can be so much more fun to go out with, a couple of people to sit at a road marshal location or at a service location or something versus just being solo. If you do have any kind of motorsport experience, think about the opportunity of running a controls location like at stage start or flying finish. Flying finish is super fun. You're tracking the times that the cars pass you and you're radioing that to stop control. You're tracking all of the car progress. This is also overtracked by the rally safe system if it is in use in a national rally, but if it's not, then it's all paper logging if it's a regional rally, in which case your pass time that car went past your location is the race time for that car flying finish. So we really do rely heavily on experienced operators for roles like start and finish ham, but you got to start somewhere. So a lot of folks will start out as a course marshal ham. And that's awesome. You could train up to be a start ham or a finish ham. If you are, savvy with a stopwatch and you've got decent handwriting, we really want you for a time control spot, and radio experience is beneficial there too. You can also train really for, over several events to take on the role of even a stage captain. So let's say you go out and you do rally for a year and you're like, this is awesome, I love this, and you want to take on additional responsibility. You could train to become a stage captain, or most of the time we do it as co-captains, so that we've got a person at start and at finish that's sort of in command of that stage. Or if it's a big stage, we typically always have co-captains. Small stages might have a single captain for them. You're wrangling all the volunteers, you're handling email communications leading up to the rally, you're working in cooperation with chief of communications and clerk of the course to make sure you know where your people need to go for A, Bs, and C blockers. It's a very well-defined set of responsibilities. Nothing's left to chance, and we provide a ton of training. So hams are fantastic for stage captains. It's been very rare in the past 4 years that I've seen a stage captain that isn't a ham. And if they haven't been, then we assign them a ham that is their dedicated radio liaison to literally walk around with them like a commo person, with a captain to make sure that you can radio anything out that needs to have happen. So with that, let me take questions. Any questions in the chat, or if anybody wants to raise a hand and come off mute, we've got some time here. Ask questions. There's got to be some.
Anybody have any questions?
Brooks, you can just unmute everybody if you want. We're all polite communicators here. I see a hand up from Abby, KB3UQD. Abby, do you have a question?
There we go. I was muted locally.
Hey.
Kind of just like, what are next steps? Like, I am so in. You've sold me.
Cool. That's awesome. The opportunities that we have right now in the immediacy, we're taking volunteers at the moment for Tour de Forest Rally. And you can find out from that link right there, americanrallyassociation.org/Tour de Forest, or you could just Google search Tour de Forest. But the key things that you're going to do look like this. You would go out and sign up at rallydata2.com. You're going to create a login. It's a very simplistic database website, really, really cool family that built this for us. It's very comprehensive, but it's very simple. You create a login, you pick what event you're interested in staffing for, and then you go in and put in your details. And that could say, new to rally, no experience, but I have the following ham gear. I have this kind of vehicle. Put me wherever you want me. Or you'll see a big category box down below that will actually show you what stuff you want to take part in. So you could say, I want to be part of setup or bannering, or, I want to be a course marshal, or I want to help out in service, or I want to work at start. You can basically check the boxes for all the things that you're available for, and then also check the boxes for the days that you are available for this rally. So for instance, with Tour de Forest, it's a 1-day rally. Only a couple of stages. It's on Saturday, I believe Saturday, October the 5th. And you can come out and do, whatever you need to do. We're taking volunteers. Volunteers opened up for that about a week ago. And we're pushing for, I think, 40 competitor teams. I don't know what the volunteer desired count is, but I can tell you on the 2 different stages, we need about 10 hams per stage at least. And for the entire rally, we would probably want to have, at least 20 hams probably to fulfill all the different roles and responsibilities. Once you get rally data filled out, that will kick off you getting typically a text to your cell phone that you entered into rally data that would have a link for the USAC speed waiver. And that gives you a process to follow a link. You read the terms and conditions of the waiver, you agree to that. It asks you to take a picture of your face using your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, there's another way to do that online. You can also do a paper waiver when you show up at the rally. So if you're not into doing smartphone stuff, don't even worry about it. Just show up at the rally and say, hey, I need a waiver. They'll have a paper waiver for you. It is required to be on rally grounds that you have a waiver. And USAC speed waiver also includes, there's options for insurance and things like that. So it's pretty straightforward. Basically, then on rally day or coming up to rally day, you would be sent all the information from your stage captain about the rendezvous location and time. You'd meet up as a big group to confirm everybody gets checked in. We check waivers for everybody. There's almost always really cool swag bags. I'm not sure what they're doing for Tour de Forest, but certainly at the national rallies, they hand out really cool swag bags with like shirts and stickers and snacks and bottled water and all kinds of stuff if you're going out there on the stage. If you're a minor, you got to have a parent or guardian with you, or they have to assign the online minor waiver before the event. And then we caravan out and deploy on the stage, and the stage captain will tell you where to park and where to go. And if any adjustments needed when 000 car comes through, they'll put you where they need to be. If you volunteered for service, there is a service captain. The service captain basically would put you in a spot to either assist with organizing the movement of rally vehicles in the service paddock, working the refueling station, working radio communications for status of service so that we know when cars are in or cars are out. Service is another really crucial radio communications point, because when the cars come in and go out, they need to come in and go out in the order that they're in the rally as they're seated. And we have to be careful about cars that are getting out of order. Also, if we have cars that have to retire for the day because they've had some damage, you're radioing that and saying, okay, our car count coming out of service to the next stage is now 38 instead of 43 because we've lost a few cars to disrepair. And so that lets the stage captain and the start ham know how many cars to expect at the next stage. And so that's a very important role for radio as well. What are the questions? That was a great question, Abby. Thank you.
Hey, Devin, if
go ahead.
people have more questions for you, can they got an email address they can send?
Absolutely. Probably the best thing to do is you can go to my QRZ page, and not only is my email there on the QRZ page, I also have links to all the regional and local rallies and information about those rallies. So you can use my QRZ page as a jump off location to find these resources. Otherwise, my rally email is my old GMRS call sign, Whiskey Romeo Fox Kilo 332. That's WRFK 332 at gmail.com. WRFK 332 at gmail.com. And of course, if you look back at the invite, you might even see just my regular old email address. You're more than welcome to send me email at devin.h.hamilton@gmail.com. That's just my normal kicking around email. I would have an N7IQZ Gmail address, but it says that I've used my cell phone for verification too many times and it won't let me make another address. If anybody has a good solution for that, I'd love to know, because I'd like to have an N7IQZ at gmail.com. But I also posted, I'm not a Facebook guy, but I posted the Facebook links up here for both Olympus and Oregon Trail Rally because they both have really great Facebook presence that I've seen third hand. And so you can go out there and find more information about there. They also frequently post any upcoming events around a particular rally. I don't know if there's a Facebook for Tour de Forest, so you can go to the Tour de Forest website, which I've linked there at americanrallyassociation.org/Tour de Forest, or just Google Tour de Forest. And again, the details there are October 5th, 2024. It is an ARA West Regional, all off-road hard pack gravel, about, I think it's 33 competition miles total. And that's all out of Shelton, Washington, a little bit further towards the south. It's very close to the Capitol Peak or Capitol Forest repeater. I saw Rebecca with a hand up. Rebecca, did you have a question?
I comment and question. First of all, Devin, thank you so much for this presentation. I have seen your presentations before, and they are very thorough. You can understand them. You're great about answering questions, and I love the sound of your voice. So
Hey, thanks, Rebecca. Thank you.
And also, you don't have to. Disclaimer. Would you mind talking about your Friday evening study events?
Sure thing. Yeah, sidebar. So, and they're actually about to come back because we were on pause through the summer. I have, for the last couple of years, hosted a GMRS-based net for GMRS operators that are interested in becoming hams. And that is typically taken place on Friday nights at 8 p.m. on the East Tiger Mountain GMRS repeater, part of the CTAC Repeater Association, and also co-managed and monitored and maintained by the Olicom network. And they've both been fantastic in supporting this and other nets. I'm going to be switching up the days, and that is yet to be determined. It's probably going to end up being like on a Wednesday night because Fridays are just really tough for people and me. But we do an hour-long net that has a partner Zoom with it. So you can join the Zoom or be over the radio. And we go through hamstudy.org questions, either working in technician class or in general class, depending on kind of where we are in a training cycle. And everybody is welcome and you can participate. And we run it kind of like trivia night. I read questions out over the air. I've taken check-ins ahead of time, and then I call on a roster of those check-ins that have indicated they want to participate. Everybody puts down an answer. I log those answers, and then we reveal the correct answer at the end of a question cycle. We usually get through about 8 core questions a night in an hour. And then a lot of times we'll get into a discussion or a Q&A or an afternet and things like that. If I don't have enough participants, it becomes a check-in net, and we fail over to the Zoom only. So if I have, 20 people check in, but only 3 of them say I'm going to participate in answering questions, then I encourage them to go to the Zoom, and I don't bother tying up the airwaves unless we've got enough people to really warrant it. So if I have over 5 people that are participating, and most of the time I'll have between 12 and 15 that are participating, unless it's a nice summer night or there's a ball game in town or what have you. But thank you for asking about that. Yeah, I'm going to start that back up here pretty quick here in September, and probably going to be targeting like Wednesday nights. And I'll put that out. That'll go up on an update on my QRZ page as well.
Okay, well, great. And I feel like a whole slew of volunteers for Rally became ham radio operators this year, which is awesome.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
which is great. And so that's awesome that you do that you provide that service as well. Because sometimes like studying with other people gets you, just gets things going. So it's, so that's great. Thank you so much, Devin.
It truly does. Well, thank you. And thanks for the question for bringing that up. And I also want to thank, at large, PSRG, and specifically Jack. Jack really was kind to embrace my rally reports and share in my enthusiasm when I would check into nets and talk about an upcoming rally or a rally that we just did. And Jack was actually a big part. I'm talking about KI7RMU. Jack has been a big part of my continued enthusiasm in sharing this with other hams. Tim, KI7ZEI, has been one of our volunteers and an awesome volunteer at that. And I see other friendly faces. And when you saw the comms plan, you probably saw other call signs that you recognize and know. And PSRG, Jack put the rally information up about upcoming rallies on the Facebook page. And I can't thank you enough. One of the things that I learned, and this was kind of a surprise to me, but when I first got into rally, I was basically told that, I'm going to stop my screen share here for a second. so you can see me. Well, am I on? Can you see me now? My camera's off. Hang on. You start video.
Camera's off.
There we go. Okay. One of the things that I was really surprised is that prior to our local area group up here kind of getting involved in rally, they really struggled to get enough hams to stage a course. They were always scrapping, trying to figure out hams. And I started asking, like, well, don't you guys talk about this on local nets? And they were kind of like, no. I was like, well, don't you put this out on your Facebook page and stuff? We're like, well, yeah, sure. But they never had really kind of put out a call to arms for regional hams, for local hams. And so I kind of just took it upon myself, and this was born of the Hot Hams group. We're a group of off-roaders and folks that used to go on ham hikes together and stuff like that. And I just put it out to our internal Telegram group and was like, hey, I'm doing this rally thing and we need more hams. And then I started talking about it on different nets and stuff. And the response I got was overwhelming. And when I took that to the volunteer coordinator for Olympus Rally first, she was like, we're suddenly getting this huge rush, this huge inrush of new hams that we've never seen before. And we picked up, I mean, probably, I'm going to say 30 something hams from the local Pacific Northwest region that were all new to rally. And to Rebecca's point, some of them brand new hams that were GMRS operators before and looking to expand their skill set and use their skills, use their license for something that has a real purpose and is a lot of fun and supports local motorsports, supports local business. And so it's really taken off. And I can't thank enough the folks that have taken the time to get involved in this. Brooks and Megan have been a huge part of rally and have been a huge part of my continued enthusiasm for this, especially when there are challenges. Being chief of comms can be stressful. Being stage captain can be stressful. And I look at these people that are part of this community, and it's like I said on a net many, many moons ago, and Jack picked this up. I said, volunteerism is not dead. You hear in the news all the time, oh, nobody volunteers for anything anymore. I beg to differ. The volunteerism and spirit around service that I have seen from the ham radio community, and I'm only a 4-year ham. I've only been a ham for 4 years. I'm a 3rd generation ham, but I'm a late bloomer. I'm 51 and I just got my ham ticket 4 years ago. The amount of outreach and dedication and attention to detail within the ham radio community around rally is stunning and inspiring. And so that's why when Brooks asked if I could come out and have this talk, I'm like, heck yeah, I can. I'd be more than happy to. I feel I owe it. I'm absolutely grateful to PSRG for putting this out there and kind of helping me amplify this message of this awesome opportunity to get out and do this stuff. And I took my son out there and we're hooked for life. Like, I'll do this as long as I can because it's really, really cool. And a lot of the old timers that are in rally, they're in their 70s and 80s, and they've been doing rally since the 60s. So, there's something there, and that'd be me if I can pull it off. That'll be me. Any other questions for me before we wrap this up? I want to be respectful of time.
There's a hand raised from Mark.
Yeah, Mark, go ahead. Come off mute.
Yeah, KSFKV. We had rallies back here. I don't know the same thing that you guys are doing, but I know in January, or February, they've done a rally up in Lake County, Lake in Ashtabula. They say it's not a race. You just go out and you go and drive a course.
Yeah.
Is that what this is?
So that is adjacent to this, or a cousin to this. That is what's referred to as a TDR, a time and distance rally. And I'm really glad you brought that up because that is another fun thing to do. In our region, there are several of these per year. In fact, I wish I had access to that calendar because I would show you. If I get access to that calendar that has all those events, I'll put it on my PSRG or put it on my QRZ page. There are many time and distance rallies where, let's say you and a loved one can jump in any kind of vehicle. You show up, they give you a route book that has all the times located in it. And your goal is to go from point A through many, many, many instructions to endpoint, point B, and hit specific times at each of these points. And most of the time, each of those instructions is a very scenic location or interesting stopping point or really cool restaurant or, some kind of sightseeing thing or overlook or something. And they're called TDRs. And so a lot of people that are in the rally community, when they're not doing rally racing support, will go out and run TDRs, and they'll jump in a Jeep or a sedan or a Tesla or whatever you got. and they'll go out there and they'll join these rallies. And a lot of times they'll end up with like a cars and coffee event at the end of it, where everybody's kind of walking around and seeing what cool cars everybody brought and having a coffee and a bite to eat and some donuts and stuff like that. It's not dissimilar to the rain or shine nets, right? Everybody's going to show up somewhere and, have a social event and stuff like that. But leading up to it, you'd basically have a course to traverse with a specific set of times. So it's great to have a driver and a co-driver. And if your radio operator's, all the better, because then you could be radioing in status or radioing to other drivers and things like that. Yeah, those are all over the region. Some of those are in the woods, off-road on logging roads. Most of them are on-road events. So you'd see something up around Pilchuck or, some of the kind of famous mountain roads that you can drive that are really pretty scenic ones. There's several TDRs that are here in the fall that are basically like fall color TDRs that will take you on a really cool course where the colors are changing and are really pretty. So that's kind of an example. And I think I know the one that you're talking about up there. I'm glad you brought that up.
Jack has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Jack.
Hey, Devin. Hey, great presentation. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir.
Along the lines, yeah, you bet. Along the lines of volunteering, I'm so glad you've acquired a number of new volunteers for the rallies. But I want to talk to you about a new program we have at PSRG, and Brooks can fill you in on the backside on more of this as we get the information out there. We have a big pool of gear that we've been putting together, and it is up for grabs when needed. So if somebody needs to borrow something, we've got some radios, got batteries, chargers, some antenna bits and things, and other things available that you may not have heard about. So
that's cool. I had not heard about that.
Yeah, and I would like to pose that possibly we work with you and the other people interested in getting gear for said rallies. And if you need a radio for, you just started volunteering with the rallies, you need a radio, you need a charger, I'd say come to us and let us know that you're talking about that, needing something. And I think we might be able to handle those needs. And
wow, that's amazing. So can I infer that this is to be considered almost like a library of equipment that you can check out to use for a period of time?
Exactly. I think that the core belief was to have a tool library, let's say.
That's cool, man. That is really cool. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, and of course we have so much equipment out there. I have a lot of different things. Everybody's got a lot of different things. So even if it's not necessarily in the pool of gear per se as an official item of PSRG, always ask, and you know how we are.
Yeah, sure.
You need something, you need a ladder, you need this, you need that, you need help with an antenna. Yeah, let us know, because we're happy to help, because
that's
the
awesome.
more people we get involved, the longer this hobby exists. And this is, as you know, a hobby of 1,000 hobbies. So thank you.
That's
Dr.
cool.
For that. But so do let us know, would you?
That's really cool. Thank you, Jack. I will absolutely work that into my communications with the organization teams. The two that I work with more than any others are the Olympus Rally Group as an org and the Oregon Trail Rally Group as an org. And both of those orgs support a total of, I want to say, 9 different rallies. And that is absolutely hugely beneficial, because we have had a lot of hams come to us and say, hey, I really want to do this, but all I've got is an HT. I'm a brand new ham. Or, I've got a radio that I really loved as a long time, but I burnt out the finals on it and it's not repaired. Like, what can I do to this rally that's coming up? And having an alternative, because I've kind of kept a very modest library of gear of stuff that I can hand out at the rally. But having something like this, where in preparation ahead of time, we can go through our volunteer database and look at what gear they have. And I keep a separate ham list in the volunteer database, so that if I see somebody, that would benefit from having some more gear, I could approach them and say, hey, by the way, there's this lending library and we could talk about this leading up to the rally. That would be huge, man. Thank you very much for that.
Sure. Well, and additionally too, we've got a lot of people that actually do program these radios. I don't want to mention any names or any Brooks and others, but they have extensive libraries of code plugs and whatnot. So
I do too. I'm up to about 30 different programming cables and probably 12 different pieces of software. Like, I just take it all with me every time. Now that I'm chief of comms, it's like I'm programming more radios than I ever thought I ever would in my entire life.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so thanks again for the presentation. Great job. And thanks to all the volunteers that make these rallies possible. you and your whole team there, Devin. So
Cool. Thank you, Jack.
congratulations.
Thanks again for all the support, Jack. I really appreciate it, man. And Brooks, thank you for the opportunity to hold this session today. And I hope it was valuable to folks. I'd love to see the recording of this so I can share this with other folks. And if anybody has any follow-up questions, again, wrfk332@gmail.com or just my normal devin.h.hamilton@gmail.com. You can always hit my QRZ page for details. I update that as every new rally comes up. And so you can always use that as a jump off point. N7IQZ. So 73, everybody, and thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Devin.
All right. Thank you.
Great job, Devin.
presentation.
Thanks, Brooks. Nice to see everybody.
Thank you, Devin.
Hey,
My pleasure.
Sebastian,